All right, so I'm here with the great Casey Grillo of Queensrÿche. Casey, how's it going?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
So how does it feel? You guys are just getting off the road now. You guys had a couple shows. How is it easing back into it after a year and a half of just nothing?
Uh, well, yeah. We had like a year and a half off, which was I've never had more than a week off, and since I've been playing music professionally, um, I'd have a couple of weeks off here and there. Not nothing big. Like a whole year and a half was uh, actually it was a bittersweet type of thing because it was
Yeah.
I got a lot done, and I didn't do a lot I should have done. I should have could have done, but yeah. I mean, we were happy to get back out there, and the first couple of shows were like, wow, this is it was different, because of
Yeah.
the half capacity shows, everything with COVID that happened. It would just it was strange at first, and then stuff started working out, and more people. Some states are more lenient or have less COVID issues, so
Yeah.
those states would be really good shows, bigger shows. So
Yeah. So you did a couple. There was no like big tour, to kick off the welcome back, I'm sure, because you had no idea what was really happening.
mhm,
But going into
yeah,
2022, you guys are heading out on the road with Judas Priest, and it is from March 4th till April 13th, just nonstop getting out there. So how does that feel
right.
to have that
That's going to
aspect
be
back
great.
into it?
Yeah, that's going to be great because the dates we just finished up on, they were all fly dates. So
Yeah.
which is a whole different thing. It's like you fly into one city on a Thursday, you play Friday, you fly back home on Saturday, and you kind of do that all week long. We flew, I don't know, it was a ton of miles, but and it's good to work that way. But the Judas Priest run is going to be all on a bus. It'll be a bus tour. Um, the COVID restrictions are going to be quite strong. Nobody backstage. No, anybody backstage won't be going out in front. Stuff like that. So we're going to be pretty try to be as safe as possible and keep the tour going. Because if one person gets it, then they could close down the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So not only do you have that tour with Judas Priest, but next month, well, this will be coming out the first. So this month, you guys will be recording your new album. That's your first album that you're playing on with Queensryche. How have
yep.
you been involved in the process? Have you done any of the writing, or have you guys all had like a
Uh,
group call? Or
we've actually been doing writing sessions here in Florida. So we'll get together and do the writing and stuff over the whole last year and a half. Michael started sending me tracks back during COVID, and we would, I would play on, just do some drum tracks to whatever he did. Some of those songs became, what's going to be on some of the records. So, yeah, that's a whole, you know, it's great to get back in the studio. And I did do a couple songs on their last record. Did some percussion stuff on. It was like a bonus type thing. I think it was only released in Europe, but I did a couple of songs for that. So I have actually recorded on a record with them, but in a roundabout way. So
yeah. All right, so we're gonna circle back around to drumming in a little bit, but you also have other stuff that you're doing outside of drumming. You also are really into art as well. Did that
yeah.
come around? Was that just something else to get your mind off of music, or were you always into art from like a young age?
I always respected art. I uh, I never tried anything until I do the doodling or whatever on a pad, but I never tried anything like oil or started with oils. And until I saw some artwork from a couple of guys, friends of mine, and I was like, wow, that's something I would probably like to do. And Rick Allen paints as well, and he's a drummer. A couple other drummers, friends of mine that are painters, and I'm like, man, I want to try to step into that. And it'd be fun to do and whatever. So that's how I got started with that. And I I haven't painted in a while because I've been so busy flying,
Yeah.
and now just preparing for the recordings and stuff. But I'll get back to it and get some stuff going.
Yeah, I'm sure the bus probably isn't a good place to try to relax and start an art
Yeah,
piece.
you're like juggling around
It
all
could be
these
an
oils
abstract
going.
piece if you want.
Yeah, yeah, that and the cleanup. It's a mess
Yeah,
to clean up. That's kind of why started I got out of oils and I went into like acrylics because it was so much easier to clean up. Oil just takes so I just throw the paint brushes away and that gets expensive. But yeah.
yeah. So you're also the owner of it's Drum Static. You make bass drum heads for you've made drum heads for Eric Singer of Kiss, Ray Loser of Korn, and so many others. How did that all come about?
I was there was a music store here in Florida called Seminole Music, and probably about 10 years ago, I was friends with the manager there, John Spinelli, and he was doing clinics, doing drum clinics there, and I was making drum heads for myself, so I'd already been doing that for a couple of years, and he said, "Hey, can you make a couple drum heads for?" I think it was Ray actually who came into town. I think he was the first one I ever did, and so I said, "Sure." And we made a drum head for him. I think it was just one drum head, and I think it just said Ray Luzier, and it was written in like the corn font, And Ray, being the guy he is, he's a beautiful person. He was like, "Hey, man, can you make some drum heads for me for the tour?" And I said, "Sure." And so that's how that got started. And he was pretty much my first biggest big artist, that did stuff, and we did all kinds of crazy stuff like a light up. It was almost like a stop sign. When you hit it with light, it would light up, a reflector drum head. So we did that. So we've been doing all kinds of crazy stuff for him. But and now, yeah, so it's probably been about 10 or 11 years since I started that
Wow.
business, and yeah, now it's everybody from like Gaga, Lady Gaga to, I mean, I can't even tell you how many different TV shows and all these award shows and Grammys, uh, the everything, you name it. It's probably I've been on there, or not me, but my artwork has.
Yeah. So do you have like a shop or is this a warehouse or is this all just out of
Yeah, we
your
got
like
we got a
garage?
small shop. We have a small
Ah,
shop,
okay.
and yeah, and got a couple employees. Yeah, so but yeah, it's growing. It's growing. Is I don't want it to grow any faster because it's hard to handle.
Yeah.
When I get out on the road, it's hard to, I have an office manager and everything that handles everything, but I like to be hands on with that stuff too because I'm really
I'm
picky
sure,
with
yeah.
everything. So that's kind of and they know it. So they made themselves picky as well. Like, so the product won't go out, that's not done right.
Yeah,
So
yeah. All right, so now we're back on drumming. I had seen when researching for this, I think it was like on a Camelot fan page. Your older siblings are both drummers too?
yeah, my brother he passed away a few years ago, but he actually played drums before I did. He got me to it. My sister, she had a drum kit, and she played around too. Um, she doesn't play anymore. I think she has my brother's old drum kit. But yeah, my brother bought me my first drum set. We used to sit side by side, and of course I was like a 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid playing, and he was a little bit older than I was, and so he had older friends too. So they would come over and they had guitars and stuff. So I would jam with them as well. So it was a lot of fun. I got learned a lot, during those years. So
Yeah, so I had seen that you are originally from Oklahoma City. How is the music scene there? Like, was there local bands for you to play in or?
uh well, I'm actually originally from a place called Enid, which is not far from Oklahoma City, but uh, and then I moved around quite a bit. But I lived in small towns, so
Yeah.
it was there was not really. there was one guy that played guitar, and the guy was old enough to be my dad at that time. He was like kind of one of those things. And I was always hanging around older people anyway. So, but we had, that was about it. I didn't have a full band to play with. I think
Yeah.
the first full band I ever played with, I was 16 years old, and that's when I started touring. So that was kind of how that worked. But my sister's husband had a studio thing that we used to jam in, stuff like that. But it was hard. I mean, I'm sure Oklahoma City was a little bit, probably more people involved in music there than when Watauga and Enid and
Yeah,
all
yeah.
these Atoka. I mean, I lived in a place called Lane that had I don't even know how many people lived there, maybe 50. I don't even know. It was so small, but you know, that's where and I would just play drums all day. I didn't think nothing about it. There was nothing else to do.
Yeah. So you had mentioned you were touring at like 16. I'm just curious, what was your first show like that you stepped out of the US? How old were you?
That I was probably, I'm gonna say I was probably about 19 or 20
Wow.
when I went to Europe. I played with a band called the Marvels, and we went to Sweden. Actually, sorry. Well, we were on it. We did a cruise ship type thing, and we went from uh, I'm trying to think of the name. Helsinki. We were in Finland. Went from Finland, and then it went to like Sweden, and did this trip, this 3-day trip. And we used to play 1 hour a night, and it was a 50s 60s band. So they played like all this old what they called shag music, and it's like sock hop and stuff that you probably never heard of, but it's like kind of strange, like that. I fell into that gig, but um, yeah, it was a gig. I made money, and I was probably about 20, 21. That was the first time I went out of Europe, to Europe from the US. And I was still a little wet behind the ears. I didn't understand what it was going to be like. Of course, it's always changing anyway. I've gone to places that used to be not so good, and then now they're really nice places, and actually the opposite, places that were great and now they're not so good. So
And so then in 97 you joined Kamelot. You replaced the original drummer Richard Warner. How did that all come about? Were you familiar with kind of what the band was doing at the time or?
uh well, back then internet wasn't such a big thing,
Yeah.
so it was hard to search for somebody like, all right, is this person talking a bunch of BS, or what's the deal here? It's just, they get these guys for real. And I think I went to my local record store, and I was like, all right, I'm going to try to find these guys if I can find them. They say they got records out. They had 2 records out at that point. So I actually found it. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And I was playing a local band, and they saw me play, and they asked me if I wanted to do the record. And I went out as a studio musician just for them. And then one thing led to another. They're saying, hey, we're going to go to Europe. We're going to do this tour. I think it was like 16 dates or something. It's a couple of weeks. Do you want to do it? I said, sure, I'll do it. I had nothing else to do. So that's how that started. Then it was like, okay, join the band. And, we became a band again, instead of me just doing the studio stuff. But yeah, and that lasted for 20 years. So
Yeah, so that was definitely the most consistency you'd had up to that point because I'm assuming before that you were just hopping around from gig to gig.
yeah, I mean, my first gig was with she had a couple records out. She was a CBS artist. Deborah DeJean was a pop artist, and so I did that for like 3 or 4 years, and then I moved, and I did the same thing like you're saying, gig to gig. I jumped
Yeah.
around quite a bit. I lived in Albuquerque. I lived in Texas. I lived in I think Louisiana or something. I lived a bunch of different places. Then finally I moved here to Florida in '93, I believe, and I just stayed. And if I had a gig somewhere else, I would just leave to do it. It wasn't a big deal. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of gigs. There's a lot of local stuff to do here. Like when we wasn't doing any touring, when Queensrÿche wasn't touring, I'd go out and play locally. I'd play a couple, 3 gigs a week. So,
Yeah,
you know,
and before you joined Queensrÿche, you were actually a fan of the band. So what in your mind attracted you to the band? Like what made you a fan of them?
oh, well, I saw them in 85, I believe it was. And they opened up for Ozzy. It's like 85, 86, something like that. And I was a fan already then. But when Operation Mindcrime came out, that kind of just, my brain was exploded.
Yeah.
It's like sound, stuff I'd never heard, like the way it sounded, the drums and everything. Still one of my favorite records of this day. That was my favorite band growing up. And I mean, I had a cassette tape. I wore that thing out. Like I had to buy it again because it wouldn't play anymore. But yeah, so they were my favorite band. And then I'd actually started knowing a couple of the guys. I met Eddie and I was at NAMM in California doing the trade show out there. And I met Eddie and I met Michael and this was years ago. We just kind of became friends. And, I was on a record with Mike Stone, which is back in the band now. A few years ago, we did some recordings together and became friends. And every time he was in town, he would invite me out to the show, and I'd go out and see the guys and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's something that, I mean, it's hard to explain how that feeling is when it came back around. It's like, I was friends
Yeah.
with them, and that was like crazy. I was like, wow, I know these guys now, because I was really a big fan of them. And then all of a sudden I get the call from, Todd, and he's like, hey, can you come fill in for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, so
So
I was gonna ask, had you heard rumblings? Because obviously Scott had gone out at that time on paternity leave. Had you heard rumblings that they were gonna need a drummer, or was this just Todd on the
no,
phone? Oh, we need you now.
yeah, nobody even knew. I mean, like he Scott's girlfriend at the time. I don't know if he's married or yet or not, but they they had a baby, and so he's like, they had a couple of weeks, I guess, before the next gig, and they didn't want to cancel the gig, and that's when Todd had called me, and I was on a cruise ship with my wife. We were having our 20-year anniversary, and he called me, and he's like, dude, can you do this gig? And I was like, man, I don't think I have time to do it. Because of learning all the songs, it was going to be a lot of work. Even though I
Yeah,
was familiar with some songs, I'd never played them. I mean, you know, I've been in Camelot for 20 years at that point, so it's kind of like, okay. And then he goes, you can do it, because I've known Todd a lot of years. Todd's a great drummer. So
yeah.
he's, he's like, dude, I have faith in you. I'm like going, I don't know, dude. But I ended up doing it. I think I had 8 days to learn the stuff,
Wow.
and rehearse it. Yeah. And go out
Yeah,
there
that's
and had one rehearsal with the guys, without Todd. Todd was back in Florida, and we were out in Seattle. And yeah, that was just crazy. Uh, it was fun. It was scary, but it was fun.
Did you have a chance to ask Scott any questions, like if you weren't sure about anything, or no? This was just your
Yeah,
thrown
I
into it.
emailed him. I had emailed him on a couple things, and he sent me an email back talking about how him and Neil Peart had a conversation about something one time about drummers, like why one drummer is so different than the other, even if they play the same song. And he's like, everybody's they're just different. You you know, like Neil was raised listening to a different style of music than me or Scott, and
Yeah,
like he likes different foods than I do. It's just the whole your DNA is just so different, and that's what makes uh, people like your stuff is because you're different. One person might like the way you do this more than you do something that somebody else does. But yeah, so I was really trying to get the vibe of what Scott was doing live. So I tried to watch as many live videos as I could, uh, to get it, you know, to play it right.
Yeah.
So, um, but and in the end, it worked out. I mean, it was it's a hard gig to go to because they had never had another drummer play with them that
Yeah.
music, you know. So I was the first guy to ever walk in and go, here I am. I'm going to mess everything up. All those drum licks you remember, never forget about them. I tried to capture most of them at within 8 days of learning this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I'm closer to it than I was back then, obviously. But man, it was it was hard, and they understood that. They
Yeah. I'm
got it,
sure.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, so they knew. I mean, it was like they were just happy that I was there, and they didn't have to cancel the gig, you know. So
Yeah. So now, without getting too, into the mud or anything, obviously it's been a little bit longer than you, I'm sure, expected to be in the band. Um,
yeah.
how did that, like, what was your thoughts? I'm sure you're already just so excited to be in the band for like a couple weeks. When did it sink in? Oh, I'm here now. This is
Well, it really sunk in when I quit Camelot. That was the thing. Where it was like, all right, because at that point, you know, the next week, Scott could have came back, and I would have been out of two bands, you know.
yeah,
So I was just kind of rolling the dice and said, you know what, I'm going to ride this thing because I really enjoyed uh, playing with the guys. Um, you know, they're a family now. You know, they became family really quick. I mean, after a few, Todd's like a brother to me. Um, so that was kind of, I was just really enjoying that moment and being in a fresh situation and really enjoyed the people I was around. So but that first, when I told uh, management in Camelot that I wasn't going to be able to come back, then that was really when it sunk in. I was like, okay,
yeah.
I'm going to really try this thing, and I think that was about a year after I'd already been playing with the guy. I'd already been playing for a year with him, so. But
So did that make it any? I don't really know how to phrase this, but like, kind of easier that you can now just put your focus on just Queensryche?
yeah, in a way, yeah, because there was, I had to do a couple of gigs with Camelot at the end of the first year I was playing with the guys with the Queensrÿche, and I went off to, I think we did Russia and Germany and I can't, a couple other places, Israel or something, and this is with Camelot, so I had to go back, and we hadn't played together for like 6 months to eight months or something like that. So I had to go back and really over that stuff again, and it kind of took the focus off of other things that I needed to do.
Yeah,
So it's easier to be in one band, obviously, than it is two at that point. But yeah, It helped. It was you know, so it was a hard one to swallow because I'd been with the guys for so long, 20 years, and then
yeah,
saying goodbye, and they're all still great friends. So, and they understood it was a opportunity that because Queensrÿche tours a lot.
yeah,
We we do a lot of shows. I mean, I think in 2000 was it 19? I think we did 100 shows. So
yeah.
it was a lot. It's a lot of gigs.
And that probably equals to like 180 days of travel because there's
Yeah, it's a lot of travel. Yep, yep. But and a lot of those are fly dates. So but it's it was one of those things that I was like, I got to do it. Financially, it was a good choice for me to do. So
yeah. And so then the first album since Scott had left was The Verdict. You had said you were on the bonus track, but what were you doing while they were recording that with Todd as the drummer? Were
uh
you in the studio with them or?
no, they did that in Seattle.
Okay.
I think we were just off. I can't remember what. I think it was like in a January, February type thing, and we were just off. And I don't even remember what I did. I was probably just you know tinkering around on my old car at that point. I think I had an old car then. But yeah, didn't which I thought Todd uh, was the right choice for that because they had already been writing stuff, they'd already been working on it.
Yeah.
Um, so and it was all he'd already been writing all the drum parts anyway. So um, instead of me just getting thrown everything and saying here you go, he was like he knew how to play this stuff and he was a drummer already and it kept it in the band. I'm still filling in. That's the kind of thing it was.
Yeah.
So you know,
And so then
yeah.
for live, did you like sit down and just talk with him about the drum parts, or was it just you
Oh
gave
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, so I got the drums like separated, everything separate,
Yeah.
and Todd would come over to the house and explain because there's a couple parts. It's hard to hear sometimes how a sticking is. Like you could play at one thing, it sounds like you know. So there was a couple things that we went over, and he'd actually sit there and play the parts, and I would video him, and then he'd play it slower, so I could just so I wouldn't have to sit there and try to learn the part in front of him. Just then I take it on my own and okay, this is how it works. So
Yeah. So
um,
now we're going in. You guys are recording in January. What is your mindset going in? Because now you have to try to keep true to yourself and the style that you've made, but you also have to make it
yeah,
sound, like a
yeah,
Queensrÿche drumming. So
man.
how are
Well,
you heading into that?
we'll see. It's like, I mean, what we've already done is, uh, I mean, it sounds like Queensryche anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
obviously the core is there still.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I can't. I mean, we've had discussions like, I'm not going to put it, it can't be like a Camelot thing because we don't do a lot of double bass in this band. So,
Yeah,
I'm not going to go in there and start going, it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. So, I kind of have to become like a chameleon and try to play the parts that fit the song. That's what I've always tried to do anyway. Like on what any kind of band I play. Like if it's a jazz band, I don't bring my double pedal. It's like what I mean, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, you just kind of because I've done every kind of gig you could think of, like from top 40 to rock to thrash to jazz to Latin to whatever. So it's just changing a hat, you know.
yeah,
And I've already had this hat on for a long, 5 years almost. So I've kind of got a idea of what needs to be done, you know. But it's always open. Like all the guys will be there when I'm recording, so we're all going to sit around, talk, go, hey, let's do this instead of that. Like on a demo, it does this, but let's change it, whatever. So because we played drums on a demo. Uh, like I would sit there and it was electronic kit, so we could in the end, if anybody wanted to change something because we were rewriting stuff back and forth, it could be changed easily. So
yeah,
some tracks we actually did a couple tracks where I tracked them in my studio, and then it it just stayed with the my drums, and then we kind of just would move stuff around to try to make it work for the if the parts got changed or whatever. But
yeah.
they're just demos, so they're we don't get too picky about them, but they sound really good.
So as we start to wrap things up, also I'd seen somewhere you at one point did drum lessons. Are you still doing those? Are you still active in that?
I haven't uh I haven't done drum lessons in a long time. It's been
Yeah,
years. I did for a while. There was a school that I was or a music store that I was teaching out of. And once that kind of stopped, I was like, all right, I did a few things. Like I had a camp here one time that a guy flew down and we did like a whole week of playing drums and stuff. And it was awesome. But yeah, I just haven't. I don't know. I love to
yeah,
teach. It's fun, but
yeah. Because
most
I'm
of the
always interested in that because I play drums and I cannot for the life of me. I had one of my friends who doesn't play drums over and I was like trying to show them and I cannot figure out how to like
how to teach.
break
Yeah.
it down. So how is that for you trying to, build from the ground up kind of?
Well, I mean, yeah, we're slowing everything down, and
Yeah.
which is hard to do anyway. Sometimes when you've learned it and you've learned it to, it's like, let's go faster, always
Yeah.
faster, right? And then it's like, oh wait, we're gonna slow it down. It's hard to play these double bass parts slow, and it's funny to say that, but because it should be easier. It should be easier to play slow. But I just have to think back to when I just started how to play, how it was when somebody was explaining me how to do it. You know, it's just repetition and seeing what they're doing wrong and being able to critique them in the right way to where they don't get, uh, you know, uninfluenced and get like really mad because they can't play the part yet. You
Yeah.
know, sometimes I mean there's stuff that that I'm working on now that's like it takes me a while to get it through my thick head on how to play it. Like this side doesn't want to work the way this side does. Stuff like that. And I just keep going over it, even if it's for an hour and it might be one bar or something stupid. And there's people that can walk in and just do it within a minute, learn it that quick. Sometimes I'm not that way. There's stuff that I can do quickly, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of knocking around in the brain and getting that, having a student understand that is, you just got to have patience with yourself
Yeah.
when you're learning something, right? Because if you're learning it, uh, and you do it right, it'll always be with you. You can always go back to it pretty good. But if you do it wrong, the learning it wrong is going to go back to playing it wrong too. A lot of drummers do that. They'll play something wrong and don't realize they played it wrong because they've learned it wrong.
Yeah.
So sometimes it makes it cool though. It's not
It
always
does.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So I want to wrap things up here. Since you are the first interview of 2022 that will be going out, what are 3 things that you're looking forward to in the new year?
the new year,
Yes.
hopefully getting over the COVID situation.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't look like it's very possible right now because everything's back to crazy. But seeing more tours go out, seeing a lot of my friends that haven't toured in 2 years or more go out and play. That's really what I want to see. I feel very fortunate because we were able to tour and do these fly dates and stuff. Um, but I feel, saddened for my friends that haven't been able to tour, and
Yeah.
that are sitting home and hating it, you know. So, but that's what I would like to see. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Casey, and I look
Thanks.
forward to
Thanks,
hearing the new
Sam.
album.
Appreciate it.